everybody, it's JD here with American Classic Tours. A couple weeks ago we launched our first ever trip recap. We recapped our Flyaway Mystery Tour, and I heard some feedback from you that you enjoyed reading, seeing where we went if you weren't on the trip. And those of you who were on the Flyaway Mystery Tour, it's always nice to come back, see that recap, all the pictures, all the text and descriptions as kind of a memory book for you when you come home. So I wanted to do another trip recap, our second trip recap. I just got back a few days ago from Colonial Virginia and the Chesapeake Bay. It's an 8-day trip. We had 27 American Classic travelers. It was a whole lot of fun. So I wanted to just kind of give you a few of my thoughts on the trip, and then at the bottom, at the end of this video, I'll show a little tutorial of how to do this, but at the bottom of this page there's a comment section. I urge you, please just put in a few comments, say what your favorite meal was or what your favorite attraction was, and maybe you weren't able to go on the trip. Feel free to go ahead and share your thoughts on things you wish you could have seen or other trips you've been on. I want to kind of just start the conversation here. So when I think back on this trip, I think of a few things really stand out. So number one, this trip was full of history. From the historic Triangle of Virginia, Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, to the homes of past presidents, Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home in Charlottesville, Virginia, or Mount Vernon, George Washington's historic home on the Potomac River. This trip was full of history. The second thing I'll think of when I look back on our trip to Chesapeake Bay and Colonial Virginia is seafood. Our first 2 nights, the dinners we had, really set the tone for the trip. Our first night we ate at Beaubrooks restaurant, and our second night we ate at Mike's Crab's house. At Beaubrooks, we had steamed crab. Now, I was born and raised in Chicago. I've lived here my whole life. So going out there and on the first night of this 8-day trip, being able to eat steamed crab was a lot of fun. It wasn't easy, but it was a lot of fun. Number 3, when I look back on this trip, I'll remember bridges. Why do I say bridges? Well, we drove across 2 famous American bridges on this trip. The first is the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge is about 4 miles long. It's really high off the ground. It's got very thin lanes, and it's known by many as the scariest bridge to drive across in all of America. So we drove on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge first, and then later that day we drove through the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. So this is a combination of bridges, man-made islands, and underground tunnels that connects the very bottom of the Delmarva Peninsula, the peninsula that comes off of Maryland, and connects it to Virginia Beach. 17 miles long. It was really neat. It feels like you're just driving under and then on top of the ocean. It's really, really cool. When I look back on this trip, probably the attraction that'll stick out most in my mind is the Virginia International Tattoo. Okay, a tattoo, not only does it mean ink that you put on your arm, a tattoo is also a military ceremonial like celebration where military bands, drill teams, dancers perform. And so the Virginia International Military Tattoo is one of the biggest military tattoos in the world. Probably, I would guess, about 10,000 or more people were at this tattoo with us. It's in a big basketball arena, and military bands from 7 different countries from around the world came and played. I mean, it was a really neat event. There was a lot of patriotism, a lot of global unity. It was cool to see the bands from other countries and, of course, our United States military band play. So in this article, I have a video of last year's tattoo, which looked very similar to this year's tattoo. You'll get an idea. It's truly a unique attraction, definitely an American classic. Okay, on the last night of our trip, we stopped at this restaurant in Washington, D.C. called Philomena's. Philomena's was one of the best meals I've ever had on an American Classic tour. We had tons of appetizers to start our meal, and then we had amazing main dishes, Italian main dishes, and then just a variety of cheesecakes, pies, tarts for dessert. It was delicious. We had so much food, we didn't know what to do with it. I highly recommend if you're ever going to Washington, D.C., you should definitely stop by Philomena's. Yep, so that's my little recap. Those are just 5 highlights. Like I said, we saw so much on this trip, and I get into more detail on all of these things with some of the pictures and videos and write-ups I have down below. But please, like I said, definitely share your own thoughts down in the comments section at the very end of the article. I'd love to hear what you have to say about the trip. Thanks. Enjoy the read.